All right. Just want to apologize for, the first, I think, 10 minutes of me rambling here has some whining in the background. Something was up with the mic. Bear with me on it. Get an idea of why I'm building what I'm building and how I'm going to execute it. Enjoy. All right. Hello and welcome. We're going to make a stump bucket. Now, I realized I needed a stump bucket having some trenches to dig, in addition to simply um, needing to dig dirt and get some material up, whether it would be making it loose with the smaller bucket. And really, I was just looking for a smaller bucket. My tractor, a B2601 by Kubota, 26 horsepower. I don't know the weight of it, but a small tractor. The front end loader on it's an LA 434, so it can pick up 434 kilograms. I assume that's from the tilt pivot, so that gets exponentially less as it gets out. So that was a consideration as well with the length of these buckets. One bucket I didn't put up here was from Good Tractor Works. Good Work Tractor? I don't know. It's similar to this guy, actually. It's a little wider, so this one I felt was a bit too skinny. But it's quite short. And, you get to utilize a lot of that tilting power, or utilize the tilting power to greater effect with a shorter bucket. Rip this bucket right off and tilt off with a skid steer, and it's going to be able to pick up, tilt, nudge, whatever you want to call it, more weight than if this is 20 feet long. This is 20 feet long sticking out here. I probably wouldn't even be able to pick myself up. But that said, you tilt this vertically, where this guy is up and down, and you use the weight of the tractor to drive it down in, wedge it in. I knew I needed some length. I was attracted to this. I understood how this is more a proper skid steer, not style, but for a skid steer application where they have a lot more power than a 26 horsepower tractor. I knew I wanted flared sides, so if I could get into the fill, if it was loose enough that I could get down into it or wiggle it in, I could actually get a decent bucket load of fill. If I couldn't wiggle all the way down, then I could just skim it and not be getting all the side loading, which is exponentially increasing as this angle does, and as the mass does, and just skim off layers or what have you, and not just be restricted to small bucket capacity. Same goes for this with these straight sides. The wedge design, again, that's increasing it so it kind of helps you pry in and then ultimately get a decent amount of fill. Now mine, I want to say I'm 10 inches at the front. I don't think I'll put up any dimensions. Yeah, maybe I'll put up a drawing. I'll take some measurements, put up a drawing. And the reason for doing that is I'm really happy with the dimensions I chose for the tractor it's going on. I got a ballast box, weighs about 700 pounds, so it can help me get a little bit of thrust into this. One issue is if you picture the plane of the skid steer attached in the bottom of the bucket, I made them 90. Didn't even think about it. I would say this thing's 90. I would say this is off by maybe 15 degrees, I don't know, 10 degrees, what have you. In addition, I'm not sure how this would help. It might help kind of shoehorn it in a bit, having this little change in angle here. But nonetheless, I should have not made this 90. I should have at least got 10 degrees there. And that's because the skid steer, when it's fully down on a tractor, at least my tractor, it's 90. So if your bucket's 90, that's that. In addition, as you can see here, there's a little bit of a lip underneath. Not to mention, this can get in the way as well. So when you're 90, your bucket's not even sitting flush. Whereas here, if you can get this 90, at least you can get your bucket to be somewhat up at 15, if not 10 or 15, if not flush-ish. That was one more issue. I'll probably touch on it here in the video shortly. My the skid steer height, I made this about a month ago now, I forget, but the height was, it must be more than the 17 or so inches, because the top of the skid steer had to be above this plane, the top here, and it also had to be slightly below, maybe 2 inches each. I kicked myself shortly after I did it, thinking, oh, now I got this ridge underneath the bucket. I'm gonna be, trying to get flat, because I could get flat even at the 90, perfect case scenario. Now, when are you ever digging on plane or above or 90? If you're below plane, this is going below 90 and you won't be able to get flush. Hence why I wish I had done the 15 degrees or so tilt to the bucket. As you can see here, when this is at 15 degrees, just to clarify this again, this bucket is flat. Yeah. So I forget where the hell I was. Anyway, I was worried that I'd be, raking this, scraping it, wouldn't be able to get flush. I actually thought, well, maybe I'll add another plate so at least I can skip along and make things flush. Maybe there'll be a day where that comes after digging a decent amount of dirt with it. I haven't had the need for it. Typically, I'm coming up almost vertically, usually 70 degrees, maybe 80 degrees, tilting back and forth, the wedging down in, whether it's to rip up some roots. We'll talk about teeth later. My teeth are probably more about this size. Whether it's to rip up roots or just cut down or do a trench, you're never making it back here. And if you do make it down that far, down I should say, from vertical or 70, I mean that's the limit of the machine. I'm not dipping down flat into a pit like I would as if I was a backhoe and making it flat and not wanting this to obtrude. So I don't think it was a big issue now that it's been in use, that this lip goes down a little bit. Anyway, I digress on that. I'll get those dimensions posted here after this clip. And then, the rest of this video will kind of show you, I hope to give an idea of the amount of work that's involved. This was made from an old door frame, a steel door and door frame that I found kind of out in the back 40 on my acreage here. Steel plate, about an eighth of an inch. I kind of have some trussing going on, as well as part laziness, part just reinforcement of leaving angle iron in place on the bottom there where it is an eighth of an inch. The front teeth that I made, I assume this design on all these teeth they're quite fat here. One, to get some purchase on the well, this one's not, so that I guess I could bend. Although that looks almost more like mine, but simply preventing bending and getting purchase where you can weld it. That said, I just welded on. It was a ½ inch. Actually, I think it was a 5/8 inch plate. I welded onto the front and tied it in with some angle iron. Nothing I ever make is pretty, but in order to puncture down in, and it works really good. So I got maybe 10 or 12 hours on it. I've moved. So I guess that brings me to the other reason. Why the hell do I want this? Well, I got some tree stumps, but I also have some trenching I want to do with it. I also have just some digging I want to do with it, whether it be in demolition even, something that I can spear. And you remember, all this weight goes to this point, it would go to that point. That's why I don't know if this is a good design. I think that on a wham bam, you know, if I wanted to just stick it down in and make a trench with my machine in the kind of one pass, it would be, you know, about 4 inches wide. It would be 2 inches wide at the tip here or whatever, and it would be, you know, 8 inches long, if that. And then I could make a nice little like 6 inch deep, if I was lucky, trench with it. So also you see these stabilizers here. I didn't put those in. I don't think I did. Does this one have it? I don't think this one has it. This one has it. This one has it. Maybe I should put them in. I haven't felt a need for it yet. Yeah. I ended up making a skid steer back. I wasn't going to. I was going to make it fit onto my pallet fork skid steer frame, and with all the work it would take to do that, and just messing around with the pallet fork frame, I ended up, you know, just beating around some metal, some thicker metal. Still part of this damn door. This door pretty much made the whole thing, but and making a skid steer frame to fit it. So that's it. All right, we'll get into it here. I'll get the dimensions posted here. I would recommend these dimensions if you have a need like I have for it, you know. And it'll go into, I've gone down in, you know, sand's no problem, but kind of clayish till I've made it into some more hard pack organic stuff. It's gone down into okay. You know, it takes some wiggling and the more rocky stuff, but I really like the size. So yeah, if you kind of have that need as I do for a small bucket, as well as something that could trench a line, yeah, anyway. All right, here's that door frame. There's the base, that metal sheet. You'll see it off here in a second, and there it is. That makes the base of the bucket, and all the angle iron mostly is used for both the skid steer frame as well as parts of the bucket. There's another sheet you'll see here shortly that I end up using for the sides of the bucket, in addition to that angle iron. Anyway, use what you got, right? So here I'm just breaking it apart. I love this here chisel. You know, I had to do some work in the basement, the concrete, and got this thing a few months ago, maybe half a year ago, and wow, it is, wish I had this tool 10-20 years ago. Never could wrap my head around how to use them or what they're good for. So here's that other sheet I'm talking about. It gets about 16 feet by maybe 4 feet long. I'd have to guess about 1/8 of an inch. Measuring it out here, measuring my diagonal. Now at the start of this build, I actually didn't have a plasma cutter yet. This build preempted me to get a plasma cutter, so I'm cutting everything with a grinding wheel here. Slow going, stinky. But yeah.
So at this point, I'm, half an hour into messing with this plate here and the blade. So I had a few holes showing through. I thought, well, I'll just beat it off. You know what I mean. And that didn't go. So I thought, well, maybe I'll try to shear it where it's starting to show through. Well, most of the plate ate the energy there from the hammer, I think, and it really didn't do much. So yeah, I just had to go back to it with the grinder until I got it mostly going here. All right, time for some welding. So just inherent in this design, with such a long piece of thin-ish sheet, of course you have to stitch weld it. So just for convenience, I do my tacks here with the small MIG I have under the table, and yeah, get it so either end won't start to lift up or pull away. I think I made a couple tacks there, and oh, I did a few more than I remembered. The majority of this build is using either this flux core MIG. I haven't welded MIG with gas, and probably, well, aside from doing some stuff at different jobs, like in my home, I haven't used it since high school, so going on 20 years. I like the flux core, works fine. My MIG is like 130 amp, it's small. Yeah, flux core stinky and smoky, but it works good. Doesn't matter if there's wind, I can pull it out and use it with my generator quite easily. Around the acreage if I have to. So here I'm just kind of grooving it out just a little bit, especially on the angle iron side. That angle iron's about a 1/4 inch wall, so I want it to have a similar profile to that 1/8 inch plate. And here I am trying to get an arc started with some 7014. That's primarily the only rod I use. Always stayed away from 7018. I have welded with it before, and I can't say I've ever welded with it out of an oven, but just that indication to keep them warm in an oven and kind of pre-bake. If I was doing like lots of welding, maybe, but I'm typically out in the garage here for an hour to 3 hours tops at a time, usually after work or before work, or even on my days off. I don't want to weld all day on something unless I really need it done. So I'll typically go fabricate for a little bit and then head out and do some stuff around the acreage or take the dog for a walk. But yeah, so here I am kind of stitching it through, and then I end up just running a full bead there. All right. So here we have the bottom plate going in place. There's I've got a couple angle iron pieces still welded to it. This section was the bottom part of this steel door that I'm using for most of the build. Got the two sides here built partly out of plate, partly out of what looks like maybe a 3.5 inch or so angle iron, about 3/16 maybe thick. So angle that on the plate, kind of using that 3 inch as my 3 inches over, about, I think it's 22 inches here, to give me that angle. And then I'm just going to weld it directly to the bottom of that angle iron on the flat piece. Now this is fabric cobbling at its finest. You know, it's heavier than it has to be. There's more metal than it has to be. You know, most often making stuff, recycling stuff from scrap here, you end up making it a bit heavier, oftentimes a bit stronger. I mean, sometimes you have to consider, you know, the design of it and where impact will be, and having odd ridges of metal here and there can cause stressor points. You know, especially in kind of round materials, I find more than anything. But yeah, nonetheless, I was tempted to remove these slots, wondering if material would get lodged in between those tracks, you know, those pie-shaped tracks. I've used it now for the, you know, remainder of the summer, a few months, digging out some stumps. I moved probably 10 to 20 yards of earth with it, about 4 feet down, digging quite a big hole, and never had an issue with it. So I'm glad I left it well alone. It adds, you know, being angled, it's adding both strength, lateral and vertical strength there to it. So anyway, so just welding it up here, alternating between the MIG and the stick welder. Yeah, I mean, a combo made in heaven. And I'm not religious, but they just complement each other well. I mean, all three. I've got a TIG here as well. Of course, I wouldn't use a TIG on this rusty shit, but you know, tack it in place with the MIG and then burn it hot in where you need, you know, even root passes, I'll burn it hot in. And if I need to fill it over, use the MIG. Of course, MIG wire is a bit more expensive. Somewhat. You can kind of place it better, so it's not, I find you get more, there's way less misplaced MIG wire. I would say per pound you could almost bet on, especially on verticals, overheads, and even some of those kind of horizontal passes on a vertical surface. Yeah, it'll just get sagging. More often it'll I find the rod on a stick, at least these 7014s I've gotten so used to, will actually follow that flux a little bit, and it can kind of actually push it down. I think it's an all position rod. Someone can correct me there. I don't really care if it is, as I you know, I like to just use it on the flats. So yeah, here I've got, I believe it's half an inch or maybe 5/8 plate. Found all these coupons just hanging around outside. Yeah, I think this sucker's like the perfect size. So this will be the kind of front end brute force taking piece. You know, I've got these 2/4 inch ish, you know, maybe 3/16 pieces of metal there on the toe, and it equates pretty much directly to this, you know, I'm gonna say 1/2 inch piece. So yeah, just cleaning it up here to fit on the front. You know, my intention here is to get good solid welds. Yeah, I mean, it's a 26 horsepower tractor. I could have beveled the edges down all the way. I mean, it's overkill for the front, but it's what I had. I could get away easily with a 3/8 piece, I think, on the front. Maybe. I'm glad it's 1/2 inch or thereabouts, because you can really just slam it into things and not worry about it. Also regrind the teeth, as you see that I'll be making in it, for the lifetime of the bucket. These teeth aren't going to need replacing. You just stick it, just regrind them to get them sharp again, which is nice. So, and it's free. freeze good. So just trying to get a level here with the buckets. Plane, if you will. It probably could have been tilted up a little bit to give it a little more digging action rather than spearing. I don't know. I'd probably be regretting that, having done that during times I need to spear things like roots and the like to try to break the stump out of the ground. So. All right, just tying in the root pass here. Stitch welding it a little bit, trying not to cause too much heat distortion. You know, I could be flipping it back and forth, obviously. This is such a heavy piece, really. It's not. Once you get it tacked on either end, it's not gonna bend much. Yeah, you can imagine there's tens of thousands of pounds of stress being maybe welded in with it on this point, but having, you know, pretty heavy duty tacks on the ends, whatever. It is what it is. It's heavy iron. That's the one luxury about making stuff out of heavy iron. Just put heavy tacks on it, weld it heavy, weld it strong. It's kind of fascinating to think about all the stress that's been welded into these larger objects and how they sit tense for the remainder of their life. But yeah, compared to, I used to build bicycle frames and that paper thin metal. I mean, shit, you'd get, you know, some stress welded into those, and it would be enough on those little joints that were barely being held together with the smallest of TIG welds or the you know, silver brazing that over their life, in addition to having a fatty like me on there, they could snap if you didn't you know, sequentially do it just right. So fun in its own right, obviously, but it's also nice just blasting in some heat here. So anyway, doing this backside, adding more stress. Trying to get some of that rust out of there, some of that lead bearing, assumptively lead bearing paint and crap off with the wire wheel. I live in this respirator in this shop for the most part. I love doing this stuff. I love recycling the old metal. You know, and all these people are getting cancer that I kind of grew up with working with and stuff. So I keep the respirator on. I don't smoke anymore. And that's that. In the winter, actually, I have is Wilson when I bought it. It's similar to Allegro, I guess, in design and a lot of others. But I have a fresh air respirator that I've kind of jimmy rigged a welding hood into it, and I'll have a fresh air hood. You know, those PAPRs. I mean, they're fine, but if you're encircled with you know, carcinogens smaller than those HEPA filters, I mean, whatever. I got, you know, I had that for cyanide, hydrogen cyanide fumes when I was gold plating and painting fumes, you know. So I'll gladly have fresh air come into me when I'm welding. Yeah, there's a hose, but I'm in there for hours. I can barely see in front of me due to the smoke, and I wouldn't know otherwise. Anyway, +1 for spending a bit of money on those fresh air systems, even if it's a hobby air. I highly recommend it. I know the PAPR hoods now, grinding room kind of 3M things are the fashion, and yeah, it'd be nice just to have it on your fanny, but anyway, yep, keep your lungs clean. Hopefully I don't get lung cancer next week after preaching all that. Anyway, here I go. Great place for the MIG. What am I welding? 1/8. This is the backing. another chunk, I think, of that plate, maybe. But yeah, popping this backing on here. Really winging it. This whole project I didn't draw out other than just the utmost and rudimentary sort of what I want in size. And that's all it is for this first video. Thanks for bearing with me. Again, I wanted to show sort of the overall process of building it, not maybe a video you could have in the background, or just to get an idea of the work involved in some of making some of these implements, especially recycling. Hopefully we're all trying to recycle as much as possible, and I imagine with the steel prices being what they are recently, that we are. But yeah, just get an idea of what it takes to build these things, and how I go about doing it. I'm sure there's lots of better ways. I invite any comments that could kind of say, hey, at this point you maybe should have done that versus this. Yeah, pop them in the comments section, and I will try to engage with you. Part 2, I guess, will be coming out shortly. I do this kind of here and there when I'm not doing other stuff. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed it, and we'll see you guys later.